Sabi natin, we made measurements because we are interested in finding out whether a causal relationship exists between a certain factor and an outcome of interest to us. So now let's talk about causation, the concept of causation, and the concept of causal inference. So these are our session objectives. So, discuss na natin, so we can skip this. This is a review of epidemiology, causal factors, and behaviors. Hindi ko sinabing cause, parang risk factor. Cause na siya, sabihin, the factor influences the outcome. Causes the outcome to happen or to not happen. So there are two risk or protective factors. Yung risk factor increases the likelihood of people without disease to move to that disease state. And protective factors naman are those that will prevent a person, will keep the person from developing a particular disease. Now, in establishing causation, we make use of different research designs. So this diagram shows the it's an iterative process of establishing associations, which begins with examining existing facts and formulating hypotheses about the relationship between a certain factor and an outcome. And for us to be able to formulate specific and testable hypotheses, we make use of those study designs. They study ecologic study, prevalence study. They are called descriptive studies. They help us refine the hypotheses that we need to test to find out if an association exists between two variables. So a hypothesis is a statement, an assumption that a certain factor influences a certain outcome. Essentially, it talks about one thing being associated with another. So we have the designs cross-sectional study, case control study, and cohort study that are used to generate measures of association. Pinag-usapan natin kanina. The cohort, cross-sectional, we compute for the prevalence ratio, cohort we compute for the risk ratio, and case control we compute for the cross-sectional prevalence ratio, case control odds ratio, and then the cohort. Now, if ethics will allow it, we do what we call an experiment, because the experiment provides the strongest evidence of causation. I said if ethics will allow because it will be unethical to deliberately expose. Kasi when you say experiment, tayo ang may control kung ang gagawin natin sa mga study participants. If we're studying the relationship with smoking and lung cancer, we will ask the study group to smoke cigarette kasi gusto natin malaman kung ma-cancer ba siya. And that's not ethical. Okay? So exposing individuals to a hypothesized risk factor is not ethical. So mostly, studies on risk factors are limited to hanggang cohort. So if you're asked, which of the designs provide the strongest evidence of cause-effect relationship? When experiment is not possible, it's the cohort. Because cohort is prospective. So saan ginagamit ng experimental studies? You will have a more detailed discussion on that tomorrow morning. It's only used for studies that test relationship between a hypothesized protective factor and the disease. So, is it not, di ba unethical na yung isang grupo, yung control grupo? Because the experimental group will receive the hypothesized causal factor, the protective factor dyan. Tapos, yung control group natin, wala. Hindi ba unethical yun, hindi siya makatanggap? Hindi siya unethical kung ay bibigyan mo sa kanya ang standard of care. Pero kung hindi mo siya bibigyan ng kahit ano, then that is unethical. So, bakit siya hindi unethical? Kasi, experiment to eh. Hindi pa naman ito available in the market. Talagang standard of care na naman ang matatanggap. But, as we will explain tomorrow, or later in the afternoon, meron din provision na there has to be an interim analysis of the experiment. What that means is, midway through the follow-up, kunyari yung follow-up is 1 year. Pag nakita mo na yung bigyan ng drug na grupo ay nagagalingan, gumagaling, they recover from the illness. Tapos yung control mo, hindi yung binigyan ng experimental drug, those receiving the standard of care. Or if there's no standard of care, kasi allowed na nila akong ibigay. Because they don't recall a placebo. Kung sila ay nagkandamata, yung experimental group ay nagkanda-recover, it's required that you stop the experiment. Because you already have evidence that the two groups are statistically different. Few days, then you stop and then you administer the drug to the control. May mga So, yung descriptive study decides to identify patterns of occurrence, distribution by person, place, and time. Yung analytic studies are done to test the hypothesis that two things are associated. This is an example. Yung BPE, descriptive studies ng 1960 have identified that the young women who use oral contraceptives, kanilang frequency of use associated with hospitalization rate. Ang hospitalization associated with oral contraceptive use and mortality rates associated also with oral contraceptive use. Yun pa lang ang nakita nila pattern. So they hypothesized that probably oral contraceptive use is associated with BPE. So they did analytic study on the relationship between OC, contraceptive use, and duration. Duration of use, oral contraceptive use lang, duration of use, and dose. And what did they find out? That oral contraceptive use, I'm using broken line, yung arrow niya, kasi it's just a hypothesis, hindi mo siya proven. So you do a research to confirm, to test that hypothesis that the two are associated. And if you find the relationship between the two, then that's your conclusion. The relationship exists. So let's talk about causation and causal inference. We can just get the historical antecedents. Ito lang. I want to explain what is meant by logical fallacy. That A occurs in correlation with B, therefore A causes B. It's a fallacy. It's not necessarily true all the time. No? A causes B if the two are associated. Bakit siya fallacy? Kasi there are 4 possibilities. Although I mentioned some of these earlier, no? During our discussion. Because pwede ng B can be the cause of A. Sabi kanina, osteoarthritis. Baka kaya yung obese kasi may osteoarthritis. It doesn't always follow that if obesity and osteoarthritis are associated, and it is the obesity that is causing osteoarthritis. Because it can be vice versa. Or number 2, some unknown factors. The third factor is actually the cause of the relationship between A and B. Kamukha ng bata, we found an association between the turning on and off of the seatbelt sign and bumps. Yung factor na yun ay turbulence. In this example, kitang-kita natin kung ano yun. But when you do epidemiologic studies, bakit natin alam kung ano yun? But it's possible that there is. And so we have to be careful about controlling for whatever possible factors there are. We don't know, and that's why we do literature review. We identify those factors that are associated with the exposure, those factors that are associated with the outcome. Well, they could be the third factor. They could be the turbulence in the relationship between the signal sign and pumps. Or, the relationship is so complex, it can be labeled as nagkataon lang. Ayaw naman natin ang result na nagkataon lang. Or B may be the cause of A at the same time as A is the cause of B. So ito yung mga possibilities. That's why you have to be careful in making conclusions that when you find an association between A and B, that A is the cause of B. Doesn't follow. Ito. Sleeping with one shoes on is strongly correlated with waking up with a headache. Therefore, sleeping with one shoes on causes headache. It's a logical fallacy. Alin dun sa four possibilities? Pinag-usapan natin. Anong plausible dun sa apat? Is it B causing A? Is it a third variable? Is it coincidental? It's the third. Coincidental? Or you think there is a third factor? Number 2. So ano yung third factor? Alcohol intoxication. Diba? Pag lasing ka, hindi mo na natanggal isang sapatos, natulog ka, pagising mo sakit ng ulo mo. Hindi yung sapatos mo ang dahilan. Diba? Pero, nag-relationship ang naiwan yung sapatos kasi intoxicated ka. Sumakit ang ulo mo kasi intoxicated ka. That's the third factor. Okay? Next, case possibility 2. Ganun din pala. Third factor, this is case possibility 2 pala. Ito, the more firemen fighting a fire, the more damage it is going to be. Therefore, firemen cause damage. Totoo naman yan, di ba? Kung i-calculate mo yung amount ng damage, sa dami ng pumuntang bumbero at mga truck, may correlation sila. Anong plausible explanation siya? Kung malaki ang property, mas marami ang pinapadalang firemen. Kung mas marami ang property, ang kasunod, mas malaki yung damage. Right? The large fires cause more damage. Large fires require more firemen. Those are ice cream sales correlated. Nasa books. Ice cream sales correlate with the number of people that drown at sea. Therefore, ice cream causes people to drown. Ano yan? Logical fallacy. What's the possible explanation? Third factor. Summer. Pag summer, maraming swimming. Pag summer, malakas ang consumption ng ice cream. So, may third factor in this case. Young children who sleep with the light on are more likely to develop myopia in later life. And Elite said this So this is what's a study done by the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center, na-publish na. Ano kanilang conclusion ay yun? Pero, later study na ginawa naman ng Ohio did not find any link between infants sleeping with the light on and developing myopia. But did find a strong link between parental myopia and the development of child myopia, and also noted that myopic parents were more likely to leave the light in their children's bedroom. Kaya if I can link between two things, hindi dahil sila ang causally associated, but there's another factor associated with both the X and the Y. Ito naman, people who use cannabis have a higher prevalence of psychiatric disorder compared to those who do not. Ano yun? Yung sinasabi niya, Sir Tato? Multo? Sabi niya sa likod, may multo daw. Okay. Ano yung other possibility? In this particular example, example, maraming possibilities. Number one, having the predisposition for a psychiatric disorder causes this individual to use cannabis. So B causes A is a possibility. So huwag tayong biglang A causes B. Kasi in this case, pwede na B causes A. Or, possibility 2, there's an unknown third factor, for example, poverty. And third, it may be that effects of cannabis are found more pleasurable in persons with certain psychiatric disorders. So yun yung mga possibilities. Ang gusto natin yung we do epidemiologic study, establish causation. Talagang walang other possible explanations. So yun, in simplest form, causation means wala bang ibang possible explanation for the relationship between X and Y. Kasi kung meron pang ibang explanation, then hindi tayo mag-conclude ng association between X and Y. So we have to rule out all possible explanations. So hypothesis can never be proven or established as true in any logical sense because even statistically significant correlations are not necessarily causally related. So I mentioned the seatbelt sign, yung bumps, perfect correlation yan. If you subject that to statistical testing, they're correlated, but they're not necessarily causally related. So determining whether there's an actual cause and effect relationship requires further investigation, even when the relationship between A and B is statistically significant. So hindi na sila correlated, pero statistically significant pa. So, this is a very important concept in epidemiology, causality. So let's just do that. So for a cause to be considered, factor to be considered a cause, it should lead to the development of the disease. It should be responsible for the development of the disease. So we have to differentiate between association and causation. Association is very just, they coexist. Presence of one indicates the presence of the other. So I'm using a double-headed arrow to indicate association. For causation, there's really a presence of mechanism that leads from exposure to disease. So there's really a cause-effect relationship. The factor influences the outcome of the disease. Now, where do we find causal association? Non-causal association because of the role of a third factor. But do we remember what we call this third factor is? Actually, there is a confounder. Does that sound familiar? Okay, a confounding variable. So, dun sa seatbelt sign and bumps, ang confounding variable is turbulence. So, we have to control for the confounding variable. Because if you don't control that and you come up with a conclusion that X and Y are associated or the factor and the disease are associated, tapos meron kang hindi na control na confounder, then that confounder can be an explanation for your result. So mababaliwala yun. And there are different ways to control for confounders, like matching, randomization. We'll discuss randomization tomorrow during the session of experimental design. But in observational studies, we do matching of the study group in the comparison. In 1981, McMahon is an epidemiologist and an author of some epidemiology book, reported results from a case control study of cancer of the pancreas. So he found an association between coffee consumption and cancer of the pancreas, particularly in women. So ang question doon ay, was the disease caused by coffee consumption or by some other factors closely related to coffee consumption? Ano nakita nila? Smoking daw. What a factor in the relationship between coffee consumption and pancreas. Ano ibig sabihin niya? Kasi daw, they found a correlation between coffee consumption and smoking. And they also found in the literature that smoking causes pancreatic cancer. Just like turbulence causes bumps. And turbulence causes the pilot to turn on and off turn on the seatbelt sign. So may confounder siya na smoking. So statistically significant associations are not necessarily causally related. So you have to pay attention to your study design. You have to make sure that your study design is able to establish what we call temporal sequence. Proper temporal sequence, ano naman sabi ko this morning? Proper temporal sequence ay dapat the factor should precede the outcome in time. Hindi pwede silang causally associated kung nauna yung outcome dito sa factor. So what is the process of causal inference? Para talaga yung ating association ay ma-establish natin na causally associated sila, we go through the process of causal inference, which is a two-step process. One is determine the presence of validity of our findings muna. Valid ba yung ating to occur na risk ratio? Because the findings for establishing association is presented by our measures of association. The risk ratio, it is a cohort study. The odds ratio, it is a case control study. So what do we mean by valid findings? The findings is not due to chance. The finding is not due to confounding. It's not due to bias. There are two forms of bias: selection bias and information bias. Selection bias is problems with the selection or the choice of your study participants. Baka yung nakuha mo na may mga sakit, eh sila yung talagang exposed. Or baka yung nakuha mo exposed individuals in your research, ay sila din yung likely to develop the outcome. Kaya kinakailangan yung iyong selection of your study participants in analytic studies, when you're testing the hypothesis that two things are associated, ay free of selection bias. Information bias is when you have incorrect classification of your study participants, misclassification. And that's why we said you have to make use of valid and reliable instruments so you minimize incorrect labeling individuals with respect to their exposure and outcome, because they can lead to information bias. And then confounding should be controlled. But first you have to identify what these confounders are, and that will require literature review. Now after you have determined that the association is a valid one, by the way, how do you rule out chance? By the process of determining whether the result is statistically significant or not. When the result is statistically significant, the result is not due to chance. When you say that you're 95% confident that your result is correct, you're just giving yourself 5% chance of an error. So chance is a function of sampling and sample size. So kailangan i-integrate natin lahat itong tatlo: chance, bias, selection, information, and confounding. Once we have done that, we now look at the causality, the possible causal relationship between the factor and the outcome. And please take note, the totality of evidence taken from a number of sources. So you go beyond the result of your study. Pag nag-causal inference na tayo, kukuha ka na ng mga other studies similar to what you did. Because we're going to consider those things. Why is it important to control these things? The chance, bias, and confounding, because they can distort the true value of an estimate. In other words, you can come up with measure of association and measure of association that is not accurate. Like yung result natin kanina 4 ng RR, possible na 1 lang yun. Possible na greater than 4 siya. We don't know that. But if you look at the design of the research report, at sa tingin mo may selection bias doon, hindi statistically significant ang result. So most likely yung 4 na yun is not the should vary. Okay? So your measure of association can be either an over or an underestimate if you do not control for those things. If you do not have valid association. It can go either way. You conclude that there's an association when in fact there is no association. Or when in fact one lang pala lang siya. Or you might conclude that there is no association kasi ang nakuha yung measure of association is 1, when in fact there is actually an association. And that association, and that incorrect finding is because of either one or all of those things, bias, chance, and profound. So, chance, the other term for that is random variable. So, it's the unique generalizations about the target. Because when you do a study, we only study a subset of the target population, di ba? Hindi naman natin, if our interest is less than 60 of Filipino children, we don't study all less than 60 of Filipino children. But we only randomly select a sample. And based on the result of our sample, we generalize it to the total population. Like kami, we only studied from 2,300 from the sample from the nationwide sampling frame of 15-year-old and above. Yung result namin of 51%, we generalized it to all Filipinos because we employed probability sampling was included for adequate sample. So the possibility of chance is always there. And that's why you don't see 100% confidence level. Anong pinakamataas ang confidence level? Ito nila with the 90, 95, and 99. But never 100% confident that our result is correct. Because you're only studying a subset of the target population, the population of interest class. But sample size has a low. The more adequate your sample size, the lower the possibility of chance. And that's why it's important when you have a lecture on that tomorrow Saturday, how to determine adequate sample size. Hindi naman sa lahat ng pagkalaas na ng pataas ko. 50,000 din ko maralan ko, mas maganda yun kaysa 2,000 lang. Okay? Hindi rin gano'n. You have to make sure that your sample is representative, adequate. So when we collect data from our sample, small letter n is the notation for a sample. That means it's just a subset of your population of interest. So based on our study of n population size, we determine the relationship between x and y. And we want to find out if the relationship, determine the extent of the relationship, and if it's positive. So, based on the result of our study from a sample, small n, we make an inference to big N. So, what's our big N? So, our small n in the nationwide literacy study was 2,300. Our big N1 was millions, 15-year-old and above Filipinos. So, but our goal is not just to talk about the 2,300. Our goal is to talk about the entire 15-year-old Filipinos. Parang if the Department of Health Secretary will ask us to determine the prevalence of malnutrition in the Philippines, hindi mo naman among 60-year-old and below, hindi mo naman aaralin lahat ng less than 60-year-old and below. We just get a sample. But the DOH will make use of this as an estimate of the prevalence of malnutrition in the entire country for purposes of planning, for purposes of procurement of for vaccination purposes, for procurement of supplementary food. So yung RR risk ratio na nakukuha natin, kukunin natin from our study, sample lang yun, i-infer natin sa total big N. So what we're saying that if RR in the sample is equal to 2, then RR in the target population is also equal to 2. Right? But there is a possibility that RR in the target population is not 2. And it's because of the determine that. So we will employ what we call inferential statistics. Inferential statistics is the process of making generalizations and conclusions about the target population based on results derived from a sample. Kung gumagawa tayo ng study, hindi tayo mag-end and conclude about our sample. We have to talk about the end. And to do that, we make use of inferential statistical approaches. But before I go on further, let me just introduce you to the concept of parameter and statistic in singular form. A parameter is a numerical characteristic of a target population, but that's not known. We don't know that. We will only know the parameter if we study everyone, all the members of our target population. Let's say the measure of association, we don't know if it's true. But we found in our study, based on our sample population, an RR is equal to 1.5. Posible siya to, but we don't get that. So we do the process of statistic. Ang statistic naman is a numerical characteristic of a sample. So based on your study, where you just collect data from a subset of the target population, and nakuha mo is 1.5. We want to generalize it to the target population. Pero hindi natin alam kung talaga bang 1.5 ang possible. Dalawang approaches natin. I think you're familiar with the hypothesis testing approach. But the other one is the estimation approach. The hypothesis testing approach is a process na kukumpit tayo and leads us to a p-value. So the p-value is the probability that results occurred by chance. So, kailangan kayo, magmuro kayo gumawa ang gusto ng p-value. Marami ng software na gumagawa na, or your statistician can do the computations with. What's important is to know how to interpret the p-value. The p-value in its simplest form, kasi meron siyang statistical definition na napakakulang ng p-value. Ang bigay ko sa inyo is the layman's interpretation. It's the probability that the result occurred by chance. So if your p-value is 0.9, what does it tell you? The probability that the result occurred by chance is 90%. Gusto ba natin yun? Hindi. We want the chance to be as small as possible. What is an acceptable small p-value? It depends on your level of confidence. If your level of confidence is 95, because when you compute for your sample size, you have to plug in the values. What level of confidence do you want the result to be or to have? You say 95%. Then when you compute the result, dapat yung p-value is not greater than 5%. So that is already small. If your confidence level is 95%, a small p-value for the result to be considered statistically significant should be less than 5%. Kasi if your confidence level is 95, then your error is 5%. Confident ka na tama ng 95%. Nagbibigay ka lang ng chance, 5% chance. So yun yung ganun ka simple ang hypothesis testing approach. Tingnan nyo lang, yung mga generate ng mga statistician, ilang pages yan ng computer output. Hanapin nyo lang yung p-value. Okay? So yun lang yung importante. Or when you reach one na, basahin nyo lang yung hanapin yung p-value. If the p-value is small, then small depending on their specified level of confidence. If their specified level of confidence when they computed for the sample size was 99%, your analysis, your p-value should be what? For it to be considered statistically significant. 1%. Very good, right? Hindi naman natin babaan ng 50% ng ating level of confidence. Kasi 50% ng ating level of confidence, ang complement of that is 50% naman yung probability niya nagpataon na yung ating result, ang result of convention. So conventional values are 90, 95, and 99. The other approach, which I think is not very familiar, and I think in medical school they talk about testing, is the estimation approach, which is useful sa mga you prefer that? Because it tells us the range of values within which the parameter is likely to lie with a certain degree of confidence. So both of these will lead us to our conclusion, whether the result is statistically significant or not statistically significant. If our result is not statistically significant, sabi mata, high yung ating p-value, and again, high is greater than the complement of the level of confidence, then the result is, you cannot rule out chance as a practical explanation of your findings. We don't want our result to be explained by chance. So ano ba yung estimation approach? The estimation approach, we compute a confidence interval estimate. So whatever data we get from our target population, from our sample or study population, yan ay yung estimate. So yung compute natin kanina na RR or 4, that's our point estimate. That is computed from our sample population, from the data obtained from our sample. But in addition to that, the estimation approach, we compute for an interval estimate. So what's an interval estimate? It's a single numerical value, confidence interval. Two numerical values, available values defining an interval which, with varying degrees of confidence, is expected to catch the parameter given as given. Here, sige, so dito tayo. By the way, having yung p-value is related to statistical software. Once upon a time, kung walang statistical software, para lang po dito sa ano pa rin. Mga ganyan. Parang calculus, buong ilang words na nauubos mo, bago mo ma-reach yung value na kailangan mo to make a conclusion or to interpret the result. The confidence interval is information about how close your sample data is to an unknown population parameter. Ano na yung population parameter? The value if all the members of the population of interest are included in the study. Ano yung sabihin na? So kung smoking and lung cancer, ang study participants mo ay sample of, say, 2,000. If you selected the sample of 2,000 from 10 million, kung collect ka ng data from the 10 million, at sinubit mo yung RR, then the RR there is called a parameter. But it is something that we don't know. Para mahanap natin yung parameter, kailangan natin collect yung data from everyone from the 4 million, from the 10 million. Pero hindi naman natin ginagawa. What we just know is, yung parameter ay hindi alam, pero gusto natin malaman gano'n tayo kalaki sa parameter. So stated in terms of probability pa rin, parang hypothesis testing, 1995, 99 were never 100% confident. And the formula for computing confidence interval depends on the specific statistics of interest, highly technical. But again, a computer can do this for us. Who has used OpenEpi? Epi info. Ano, so OpenEpi, no? Madali lang doon. Pasok nila lahat, mag-compute niya siya ng confidence interval. The same way na hypothesis testing namin ang gusto mo, mag-compute nyo ng E. So ito yung example ng result. Ginawa natin na. Diba we got a value of 4, right? This morning. We call that the statistic. That's our estimate. That was obtained from computing for the ratio of the incidence of disease among those exposed to the factor divided by the incidence of disease among the unexposed. In our study, in our sample. This is how the OpenEpi output looks like. So, i-press mo lang siya, tapos hindi niya sa'yo to fill out the 2x2 table, then magpupumpute na siya na confidence interval. So dito, ang kanyang na-compute na assuming that itong data set natin was obtained based on a sample size calculation that used 95% as level of confidence, then we will have to look at the 95. Kasi pwede rin mag-compute ang OpenAI ng 90, because the one above. This one na kinuha ko is for 95% confidence interval. Kasi ang sample size is computed using 95%. So may connection din yung parameters na ginamit nyo in determining sample size when you analyze your data. Okay. So, anong ibig sabihin niya? Huwag nyo napansin nyo yung ibang those are all epidemiologic measures, but that's beyond the scope of this basic. So we're saying that we are 95% confident that the value of the parameter, yung hindi natin alam, yung dun sa population, is anywhere between 2.67 to 5.9. So, parang, ano lang ang picture na ginamit na you are asking, for example, your driver to pick up somebody at the airport. Tapos, ang sasabihin mo na, ano siya, mukhang ang edad, 95% lang confident na ang edad na is 20 to 30 years old. Okay. Pero kung mas gusto mo na masigurado ka na 99% ka, ano gagawin mo yun? Hindi, mas maluwagan mo. I'm very sure, 99%, pero ang gagawin mo, sigurado ako na edad niya is 5 years old, 50 years old. Parang, sigurado ako, hindi talaga yung edad ng aming kapasundot sa airport. Kasi 99% ka, pero ang lawak ng binigay mo. Diba? So, yun yung relationship na so, we don't want naman our confidence interval to be very wide. Kasi hindi lang siya magiging useful. So, based on this, the result that is significant or how do we know that? Okay, so kanina, statistical significance for hypothesis test is based on the data. Now, ang ating basis for statistical significance, we're using the estimation approach to inferential statistics is, titignan natin yung confidence interval if it is consistent with our estimate. What's our estimate? 4.0. How do you interpret 4.0? There's association and the factor is the risk factor. What does 2.6 mean? There's association and it's a risk factor. 2.67, 2.68, 2.69. So pareho ang consistent ang ating nakuhang range of values. Ating confidence interval is consistent with our interpretation of the estimate. What happens if so we consider it statistically significant kasi consistent yung confidence interval. Let's say for the same data, the same estimate, 4.0, pero ang ating 95% CI is equal to 0.5 to the 8.0. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng 4? Risk, right? Factor is a risk. Ano ibig sabihin ng 0.5? Factor is protective. Protective, nasa loob din ang 1. Ano ibig sabihin ng 1? No association. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng greater than 1? Ng 8. This. Do you want to consider this statistically significant? When you say, I am 95% confident that the relationship between X and Y in the target population ay pwedeng protective, pwedeng no relationship, pwedeng risk. To consider this as not statistically significant. Compare that with 4. Ang 95% CI na doon ay 2.67 at 5.9. What does 2.6 mean? Risk. Nasa yung 1? Wala. So all the way, this. This is the 50%. So your confidence interval and your estimate, this is from your small n. Ito yung sinasabi nyo na posible sa inyong target population. Ako, ano ulit? Ulit? Hindi na. Ulit na? Ulit. Sige. So ito, for you to say that your result is either statistically significant SS or non-statistically significant, hindi lang yung computed confidence interval if its interpretation is consistent with your estimate. Estimate meaning to say yung nakuha nyo sa sample. So, sa sample, the factor is a risk. 4 kasi siya, di ba? So, there's an association. And the association is that the factor is a risk to the development of the disease. Alright? Now, nakakompute tayo sa analysis. Ano ba yung itsura dun sa pinanggalingan ng sample ko? Yung target population. Ang sabi ng analysis, 95% confident ka na ang value dun sa target population sa weekend ay posibleng 2.6 hanggang 5.9. So what does 2.6 mean? Risk. All the way to 5.9 is a risk. So your confidence interval, this range of value, is consistent with your interpretation of risk in your sample population. So you consider that as statistically significant. On the other hand, if your confidence interval is not consistent with the factor being a risk factor, greater than 1 kasi ang risk, di ba? Then not significant siya. So, hindi ba ito consistent? 0.5 a risk, that's not about the risk. No. Ang ating conclusion is my relationship. Sabi niya, sa population, posibleng walang association. At the same time, sinasabi din niya na posibleng may risk factor. Okay, so, it ranges from the factor being protected to no association to risk. Pag ganyan ang result niyo, then you consider that as not statistically significant. Ano sinasabi niya dito? I am 95% confident that in the target population from where I got my sample, where I obtained a risk ratio of 4, can be anywhere between 0.5 to 8. And hindi consistent ang interpretation, yung values ng inyong confidence interval, the interpretation ng result nyo sa using a sample population. Okay, so ayun naman yung guide.
So where do we get the more than 1 vote?
Pinunod natin ito. Ano yung ratio ito by today on. So, yung kanilang morning, at saka ito, pinunod natin yan. The risk ratio, assuming cohort yan. So, nakakompute tayo ng 4. Tapos, gusto natin i-generalize yung result natin to the target population. So, dito, kung sinabi nga statistically significant, we cannot rule out chance, hindi natin pwede i-generalize ito dito. Kasi ito is greater than 4, ang ratio values natin na binibigay nila na possibility dun sa target population is posible daw na protected kasi less than 1. Posible din na walang association kasi nasa loob yung 1. Posible din siya na risk. Then we cannot generalize, we cannot infer the result from a sample to the target population. So we just find out if your CI is uniform with your, or another guide is, tingnan nyo kung nasa loob yung 1. Null value of 1. So in the example, the null value, in the first example, the null value is not here. So the result is statistically significant. Kung 1 ay nasa loob ng interval, nasa loob ba siya? Yes, so the result is not statistically significant. Pero ayoko lang kasi mag-memorize kayo na 1 is in the interval, not significant. Pero ano ba sinanong? So, yun interpretation. Okay na po na, Victoria? So, yun mo. Consistency ang hinahanap natin. Kung interpretation natin sa ating estimate and risk factor, dapat ang CI natin consistent with risk factor din siya. So, may association at saka risk siya. Pag pumasok ang 1, hindi na siya consistent na risk factor kasi 1, no association. If our finding is less than 1, protective yung estimate natin, dapat yung major values natin are also all less than 1. Otherwise, kung may 1 din sa loob, then the result is considered not statistically significant. So I hope next time you read journals, you can now interpret the values presented. Okay? So let's come up with the examples. Right? So these are more examples. 1.9, ang CI niya ay 0.3 to 3.3. Hindi siya consistent, right? So ang result is not statistically significant. Yung isa consistent 1.9, pero ang CI niya is 1.3 to 2.8. So yung range na yun ay parehong nagsasabi that the factor is the risk factor. Right? Yeah. Is the CI consistent with the estimate for risk factor, the range, risk? The answer is yes. The CI is consistent with the estimate which says that the factor is a risk factor. Thus, the result is statistically significant. And when you say that the result is statistically significant, you're saying that the result is not due to chance alone. Good. Okay, this is another way of illustrating the confidence interval. So, di ba sabi natin, the null value, the no association value is 1. So, if your estimate is 4, yung nasa gitna na perpendicular line, at ang pinakita natin kanina 2.67 and 5.99, then statistical significance siya kasi consistent siya to the right of the null value. So, not significant yung isa sa taas kasi it crosses the null value of 1. So, meron siya less than 1 sa interval. Yung next, the second, from the top, is also not statistically significant kasi it crosses the null value of 1. Ang ratio values na is from less than 1, including 1 to greater than 1. Statistically significant yung dalawa sa bottom. Kasi ito, estimate mo, at saka yung confidence interval, consistently less than 1. So, naman consistently risk greater than 1. Hypothesis testing ay discuss na natin. It's a procedure that ends in the rejection or non-rejection of the null hypothesis. So, you will have more of that tomorrow sa under statistics, biostatistics. Basta, ang bottom line is hanapin yung p-value. What the p-value means. And if it's less than the set level of error. Ayan. Ito naman din. So P is the probability that there is not a greater chance. Ayaw natin na malaki na P. The smaller the P, the more convincing the evidence is against the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is no association. So ito yung basis ng ating rejection. If the level of confidence is 95%, then p-value less than 5% is considered significant. If it's greater than or equal to 0.05, then its chance cannot be good enough. Okay? Example, our null hypothesis, there is no association. Because our research hypothesis is there is an association between lung smoking and lung cancer. So assume significance level of 0.05 because our level of confidence is 95%. So the decision to reject the p-value, kasi ito i-generate dito na statistical software. So if you choose to do hypothesis testing, parehong data, pareho yung 2 by 2 table, pero gusto naman natin p-value kasi we want hypothesis testing. We don't have to do both. Either hypothesis testing or the estimation approach, they will give consistent result. Pareho lang ibibigay na. Ang kagandahan lang sa estimation approach, nakikita natin, mas ma-appreciate ka dito, di ba? Mas nakikita natin, ano kaya ang values sa range of values sa target population. Dito wala. Binibigay lang natin. So, is the result statistical case? Ano ang p-value niya? Napakababa, no? 0.00000. So, the result is statistically significant. The association between smoking and lung cancer is statistically significant. Alright. This is just a summary. Now, after we have put out chance, ang next na i-rule out naman natin is bias, and then confounding. So there are two forms of bias, the selection bias and information bias. Ito din ba yung example ng selection bias? So I mentioned earlier, it's not the sample size. Hindi lang naman natakpan yung sample size, hindi mawawala yung selection bias. Ito. Anong ginagawa natin para tikman natin kung ang ating sabaw ay tama na sa timpla ng isip. Meron kang pot, o kung may patay sa tubig, siya di ba isang baril sa grain dito. Tapos sa ordinary day, meron tayong pot. So, ano usually tinitake natin? Isang kutsara. Pagka ba ang ating niluluto soup ay isang baril, gano'n kadami yung ating sample na titikman. Isang kutsara pa rin, di ba? Hindi tayo lalagyan na isang pot para malaman natin kung ano tama rin yung ng isang baril. So, yun yung isa ng sample size. Hindi necessarily mas malaki yung sample size. Kaya meron ng adequate sample size kinukumpute. Ano lang ang importante? Haluin mo ng haluin yung sabaw para every section of the pot, of the baril, ay representative. Pareho ang kanyang characteristic dun sa lahat. So, kahit kumuha ka lang ng isang parte sa isang baril ng soup, kung pareho naman ang quality ng asin doon sa loob, you can come up with a valid result. A representative example. So, after nationwide study, tayo ang 2,000 din. Yung mga, ano diba, yung mga pre-election surveys, nasa 2,000 lang yan. So, hindi kailangan damihan. Kasi kahit damihan mo ng damihan, hindi mo naman pinalo. Yung inyong sabaw, lahat ng asin mo sa ilalim. Hindi pa rin representative yung makukuha mo result. Okay? So, ito. Meron ditong study ng percent participation. Good totoo. Just for purposes of illustration, hindi naman natin inaaral na lahat. Pero in this example, para inaaral natin lahat, so we get data o ilan na talaga ang SHG. So when everyone in the target population was studied, ang nakuha prevalence is 14.8. Ito yung selection bias. When 99% participated, 6% ang nakuha prevalence ng CHD. Kung 85% ang sumali, 11.5. So saan ang mas malaki ang bias? Dun sa 99. Kumpara dun sa 88. 85 ano nangyari? Yung nakuha ng sample hindi representative of the 100%. So parang yung sabaw ng baril yan, at saka yung sabaw ng pot. So, dinamihan na ng labos yung isang baril na soup. Pero hindi naman representative yung nakuha ng sample ng sabaw dun sa buong pagbuuan. Kaya, bias pa rin ang result. Okay? So, hindi ibig sabihin na mas maganda na yung study mo kung marami kang sample size. Your sample should representative of the characteristics of the target population and attitude. And tomorrow we learn about how to select the representatives. Ganyan natin ito. This just shows na nag-iiba yung value ng RR because of the selection. If you can go through this and if you have any questions, I just respond and you'll see of it. Information bias basically talks about classifying the study participants as with factor or without factor, as with disease and without disease. Kung nagkamali ka doon, syempre magkamali na rin yung ating risk ratio, right? Yung prevalence ratio kasi our risk ratio is derived from our incidence ratio. Ang incidence natin, ilan yung may sakit sa mga population. Eh kung balik na yung ating label sa kanila, may sakit o walang sakit, eh di magiging mali na rin yung ating risk ratio. And then ito yung confounding, mixing of the effect of exposure and disease with that of a third factor or a confounder. At meron hindi man lahat ng bagay yung confounder. Kailangan lang, a minimum of 2 for basic courses ng LP. Pero sa aming master's and doctoral, 5 yan silang requirements. But just to introduce the concept, dalawa lang pag-usapan natin. It's considered a confounder if it is associated with the exposure, and it has also been found to be a risk factor of the disease that you are studying. Because if you do not control for these confounders, you will come up with an under or an overestimation of the true association. So it can distort the relationship. I think ito yung example ko kanina, wala kang illustration. Sabi ng bata, wish to be in turn on the secret. So, may association, but in fact, wala dapat association, yung extent. So these are just methods to control for confounding at the design stage, randomization, restriction, and matching. We discussed it later. And then at the analysis stage, unfortunately, we're not going to cover this. So there are statistical measures to eliminate the effect of confounding. Pero dapat alam nyo kung sino sila at ano sila. Kasi hindi kayo makapag-analyze kung hindi nyo kinolect yung data ng confounding variable. Kaya in your literature review, when you develop your proposal, you have to exhaust the literature to find out what are the possible third factor in the relationship between X and Y that you are to establish. So, just to give you an idea that you can control for confounding, but you don't really have to know the details about what stratified analysis is, what unified analysis is. Alright? And then, ano nang sabi natin step 2? Step 1 is determine if the association is valid. We rule out chance, we rule out bias, and we rule out confounding. Kung na-rule out na natin yon, then we have a valid association. We can proceed to the second step, determine if the association is causal in nature. And to do this, we have some guidelines. One of the guidelines, the set of guidelines is provided by Dr. Bradford Hill, who is a statistician and an epidemiologist. So he wrote an article that laid out 9 criteria for evaluating statistical associations. He presented this report in 1965. And so this set of criteria have become an informal standard to judge epidemiological research on causation. Okay, number 1 is the strength of association. So 9 ang kanyang sinasabi. So tingnan mo yung strength of association. It is very strong. Kaya nagiging strong ang association the farther it is from the null value of 1. For lung cancer, hindi na natin kasi establish na yung lung cancer. The RR was computed then when they did. But I think recent studies have established up to 30. So yung mga naniligaw-ligaw dyan, your probability of you developing lung cancer is 30% higher if you smoke compared to the non-smokers. During that time when the association was assessed for causality, then so higher for non-smokers, so there's an argument in favor of causation. Kaya sa kung yung association mo, 1.5, 1.1, and baka hindi kayo masyado mag-ano ng causation. Second is temporality or temporal sequence, yung sinabi ko kanina. The exposure should precede the effect in time. Para masabi mo that the association is causal. And X precedes Y. So the exposure precedes the effect. Now, we refer to lack of proper temporal sequence as temporal deviation. In other words, hindi malinaw kung nauna ba talaga yung exposure kaysa outcome or vice versa. And temporality can best be established using longitudinal studies. So in the smoking and lung cancer, it has been shown from studies that if you smoke for many years or even decades before carcinogenesis, and cell transformation, this will lead to lung cancer. That's the second one. Pilipinan natin lahat ito. Number 3 is consistency. So consistency is you have to demonstrate that across studies looking at smoking and lung cancer, ay pareho kayo ng nakuha mo. If you study found an association, other studies have also found an association. Then that's an indicator, a criterion in favor of causation about the association. So different study population, different age groups, different sex, different age, pare-pareho ang resulta. That's consistency. Tapos, yung isang cohort, yung isang case control, yung isang ecologic study, ganun din ang kanilang conclusion. There's a relationship between smoking and lung cancer. That's consistency. So that is also an argument in favor of causation. So dito, the smoking and lung cancer, different methods of studies produce the same result. Okay. The relationship also appeared for different kinds of people, in male and female, in different populations, in different populations. Consistent result ng relationship. Number 4 is theoretical possibility. May sense ba yung relationship? Okay. May sense ba yung blood sign na focus ng bounce ang hiliman? So, kailangan hanapin siya ng mechanism. So, for the smoking and lung cancer, the biologic theory of smoking causes tissue damage to the respiratory system, which over time resulted in cancer the cells, was a highly plausible biological explanation which supported causality of the findings of epidemiology. So, cigarettes contain many carcinogens. Coherence. Coherence naman is the facts stick together as a coherent whole. This is more or less related to consistency then. So, different studies as well. Specificity of the cause. Yan naman nilagay dyan na asterisk. Because you have to use this with caution. Because you do not use specificity to reject causal hypothesis because, especially for non-communicable diseases, there are many factors that have also multiple effects. And all diseases have multiple causes. Specificity kasi of the cause, ibig sabihin, kung ito ang disease, dapat ito lang nag-iisa ang cause. So, mass evidence daw yun of causality. Isa ang factor ang pag-lead down sa outcome. But as I said, with non-communicable diseases, we cannot identify a single factor responsible for the development of CHD, for example, or cancer. And then itong dose-response relationship, we're looking at direct biologic agent between the factor and development of disease. There should be a positive linear, there's a positive linear relationship between the number of cigarettes smoked and the incidence of lung cancer. I think for the question earlier, here's another example. Dose response relationship. isang study, 1.3 ang risk ratio, or refer to it as mortality ratio, kasi death. In another study, so makita mo yung pattern, no? As the dose increases, the number of deaths due to lung cancer also increases. So, ayan, study 2, study 3, consistent sila. And then, of course, we have experimental evidence, but it's only limited to in vitro studies and animal studies. Hindi tayo pwede mag-experiment sa tao. Hindi nga, uminom ka na, kumain ka na, mag-smoke ka na ganito kadami. Tingnan natin kung ilan sa inyo mag-akas. So, yung mga studies ng relationship ng smoking and cigarette, experimental evidence are based only on in vitro studies and record studies. So, they painted yung mga rabbit's ears, they produce cancer in the ear tissue over time. Hence, it was clear that carcinogens were present in tobacco gum. Okay, unethical to do research in humans. And then finally, yung analogy. Again, I have a note there. This is controversial issue, not popular use. Because it can lead to misleading result. Parang, gagawin mo na, parang wala yung isang factor na ito lang nagpos ng sakit. So, meron kang bagong sakit, siguro ito din yung factor na nagpos ng sakit. That's what analogy in its simplest form. But very tayo siya. Okay, so in fact, that would this criteria. So very subjective siya, no? When it comes to it. Ang daming proseso na dadaan. You have to evaluate the relationship across the 9 or 8. Pero sabi niya, I quote, none of the 9 viewpoints can bring indisputable evidence for or against cause and effect hypothesis. What they do with greater or less strength is to help answer the fundamental question, is there any other way of explaining the set of facts before us? Is there any other answer equally or more likely than cause and effect? Ito ba ibang paliwanag? Yun ang hinahanap natin. So, ang reality is, no single study is sufficient for causal inference. So, nag-study ka ng isa, we refer to the other studies, go through the criteria of Bradford Hill, especially in consistency and coherence across different studies. And causal inference is not a simple process. You consider weight of the totality of the evidence. So there's a composite, no? May set of factors na ginagamit natin. And it requires judgment and interpretation. And then, okay, so you're familiar with the epidemiologic models of disease, trying to improve this awareness. So I'm not going to discuss them anymore. I'll just discuss the most recent model of disease causation, the sufficient component cost model. Ano naman nakakilala kay causal bias. The other term for sufficient component cost model. Kasi, the three models, epidemiologic triangle, the Lambert, the Ebb of causation, hindi na siya na-invoke for non-communicable diseases. It can be invoked for infectious or communicable diseases and to explain the causation of disease, pero hindi na siya sufficient for non-communicable diseases. So, Rothman came up with another new model to explain cause of specifically non-communicable diseases. Ang tawag na doon is the sufficient component cause model. Ang sabi niya, the cause of any effect consists of a constellation of components that act in concert to produce disease. I don't know. Then, you want to go for a break? Break muna. Parang dito na rin ito.
Yes.
Kasi nga hindi na-allocate yung tatlong nakaraang model, the sufficient component cost model with the causal part. And then sabi dito that cause of any effect consists of a constellation of components that act in concert to produce disease. In other words, this is the first in the presence of this example, three factors. 1, 2, and 3. factors 1 and 2, kung wala kang 3, disease will not develop. Kailangan yun. So, para kung mag-switch ka ng kailan tayo nagkakailaw? Ano nga components ko? Kailangan ka mayroon sa electricity current, may switch, at may bulb. Parang gano'n. So, bakit yung ibang may lung cancer, ang lakas na nigarilyo, hindi nagdalang cancer? Kasi, smoking is just one slice of the pie. Kailangan mo test yung pie with all the component causes for this to develop. And this, itong factors na doon, natawag namin sa factors 1 to 20 that make up the, that have to be present for this to develop are called component causes. Component cause 1, component cause 2, and component cause 3. And each of these can act far apart in time. Another ito, different component cause can act far apart in time. Pag pinanganak ka, at genetic is one of the component causes of lung cancer, pag panganak mo na lang, may one slice in the pie. Okay? Tapos, at age 20 years old, pwede meron ka na noong, dito ka na, you started smoking, and then you are exposed to air pollution, and you are exposed also to radiation. So, ilan na lang ang hula para magkasakit ka ng lung cancer? Isa na lang. At 50 years old, nagkaroon na ng imputation. Completion of the pie is synonymous to onset of illness. Yun yung sasabi ni Rockman. Yun, more or less plausible explanation na siya for the causation of non-communicable diseases. Hindi na pwede yung immunologic trial, agent, host, and environment. Kasi may agent, may host, and environment. Wala namang agent na nag-isa for non-communicable diseases. So we invoke the sufficient component of model in the causal price to explain causation of non-communicable disease. The sufficient cause is a complete causal mechanism, a set of minimum conditions or events or characteristics that inevitably produce disease. Pero, itong one of the sufficient causes is referred to as a necessary cause. In other words, hindi pwedeng mangyari ang isang disease will not develop if you do not have it. Tingnan natin ito ang example. Assuming walang kalokohan, magkaka-driver's license ka na, if you are at least, at batas ng Pilipinas, 16 pala, 18 pala, so let's assume it's 16 years old. You can only have driver's license if you are at least 16 years old. Assuming that's the policy, that's the law. Now, for tuberculosis, let's say, you will only have tuberculosis if you have the tubercle bacilli. So we refer to them as necessary cause. Yung sufficient cause naman, ang definition niya is, when you have it, automatically you have the effect. So parang ano yan, when you jump, what happens to your feet? It's awkward. The drop, right? So yun yung sufficient cause. Pag may ginawa ka, nangyayari yung isang bagay. Now, when you identify for non-communicable disease, what sufficient cause? Na nag-isa lang siya. So I think the answer to the question is, halos wala, kaya nga pinanganak yung sufficient component cause model. So, we don't talk about a factor as a sufficient cause. We talk about a component or a set of factors as a sufficient cause. So, dito sabi natin na, if you have it, sufficient cause ito, factors W, D, Z, T, and X. Pag nangyari, pag nabuo yan, automatically, that means component cause factor. The third characteristic is disease can have more than one sufficient cause. So alam na natin yung we talk of sufficient cause under this model, hindi siya isa o hindi set of causes. Difference lies in the part. Ang sinasabi naman, a particular disease can have more than one sufficient cause. So pwede pa lang different combinations of factors like you can have disease if you have factors 1, 2, and 3. You can have disease if you have factors 1, 2, and 4. Or the same disease will occur if you have factors 2, 3, and 5. So there are 3 means by which disease X, the same disease will develop. But one of these component causes is necessary. Ano yun? Ibig sabihin lahat ay meron siya. What is common in these 3 sets of causes? 2. Okay? So kailangan ng this is 2. So 2 is a sufficient cause para the disease will develop. This is just an illustration of that. Anong necessary cause dito? You have a group of people. 3 of them have the disease, numbers 1 and 23. 3 of them do not have the disease. What is the necessary cause? Anong sumunod sa tatlo? Factor 2 na, diba? That's illustrated. So, hindi enough. At hindi enough, but factor 2 is not sufficient enough. Kasi merong factor 2 na hindi naman nagka-sakit, right? Sino yan? Individual number 5. 5? 4. So person number 4 ay meron o factor 2 which is necessary for the disease to develop. Pero hindi siya sufficient. Hindi siya enough para magkaroon ng sakit. Alone. Right? It has to be in combination with others. So, to summarize, the causality involves a causal inferential process, full outcomes, bias, and confounding. In other words, determining if the association with the following is valid. And then, yung valid na, nakita ng valid ng association, you subject it to the Hill's criteria for causality. So there are 2 ways to determine statistical appreciation, the estimation approach, and the hypothesis testing approach. Ano ang purpose nito? This is an approach for statistical inference. Statistical inference is generalizing the report based from the sample to the target, the population inference. Okay? So we can rule out these things for a relationship to be valid. So the factor and how entities associated or not. It's not associated in there. If there's an association, check if the association is causal or non-causal. And you can even further talk about very ignorant if you have proper that. Alright? So this is a summary of the Hill's criteria of the assessing causality. Alright? Any questions? Let's proceed to the different studies.